All right. Well, hello and welcome, whoever is out there. Um, my name is Sherry Hageman, and I'm one of the customer support analysts at Array Software, and we are the providers of your StreamTask application. So I'm going to do a little, this will be a refresher. It sounds like you folks have already used the system, but it may have been a while. And we're going to have Liz talk about some policies and procedures as we go through some of this stuff so that everybody is on the same page as to what they're supposed to be doing or not doing. So a couple reminders about using the application and kind of what we call etiquette. When you are in StreamTask, you have a 30-minute timeout, which means after 30 minutes of not being active in the system, if you tried to do something that would tell you, you've been timed out. So by doing something or being active, that generally means you're clicking on things, you're moving around, the screen is refreshing. Even if you're in a task and have it open, if you're not, actively, interacting with the server. So if you're just typing notes and not saving or whatever, it doesn't think you're active. You will get a 30-minute or 5 minutes before your 30-minute timeout, you will get a 5-minute warning, pops up on the screen, says you have in 5 minutes at such and such a time, you're going to time out, and you can click OK, and it resets the timeout, and we'll talk about another way of resetting as well. But the thing about logging in and logging out and using resources and locking tasks is if you are in the system and you have a task open, it is locked to anyone else who might need to work that task, because sometimes there's multiple assignees. Only one person can be in a task at a time actively, editing, and that's by design so people don't step on each other's toes. So the other person would only be able to see it in what we call a view mode, where you can read the whole task, but you can't actually make any edits or save any changes. So if you leave a task open and you go to lunch or you go home for the day, until your timeout is up, no one else is going to be able to open the task, at least not any regular user. Liz, as a system admin, does have the ability to unlock tasks, but you have to be careful because, again, if you're not really sure if that person is still there or just has the task open, it might cause some difficulties if it gets unlocked and then somebody else does something. So what we try to remind people is if you're done with the task, at least close the task, get out of it, or if you log out, and the log out button is, you can, no matter where you are in StreamTask, that is available. You can just click log out at any time, and that frees up all the resources that your session might be using as well. I don't know how many people total you might have working in there at any one time, but for some of our customers where they have larger numbers, if a lot of people are in there and using up resources, it could possibly slow down the application. So if you're done, just make sure you officially log out. Do not close the browser. That doesn't log you out. That just closes the browser. So if you really want to get out, log out. If a task is open and you log out properly, it will close the task, so it won't be locked either. Okay. Little orientation. When you log into StreamTask, you default automatically to what we call the Tasks tab. The tabs across the top are menu tabs. That's what we refer to them as. On the Task tab, these are your menu options down here in the burgundy ribbon, and all of the tabs work that way. If you have any options, they're in the ribbon here. When you sign in, you automatically default to the Task tab and to your Mine list. These are the tasks that are assigned to you either as a primary or an other assignee. So all tasks assigned to Liz, because she's signed in here, are on her list, and it tells you how many of the total are flagged. Only 10 tasks will be visible per page. You can go from one page to the next using the single arrows, go to the end of the list, back to the beginning. You can jump to a particular page number. If you were working in here, logged out, went to lunch, and you know you were on page 10 when you finished up, and when you come back, you want to get right back to page 10, you could get there that way. All right. That's how you move around within the pages. In addition, there are some flags on tasks, and there's a flag column. We have a flag legend. So if you don't remember, don't know what a flag means, you can open this up and take a quick look at it, and you can put it over here to remind you if you want. Most of you, when you first get in, because Liz has newly converted the task into the system, you will have a red flag, which means the task is new to you. It means you've not opened it up, looked at it, made any changes to it. It's considered new to your list if it has a red flag on it. It could also mean the start date is today, but I don't think that applies to you all because you're not using I don't think you have a start date set up anyway. Most of the time for update management, you don't. A blue flag, there's a blue flag on a task. It means somebody wants you to take notice. It's they basically have forced the blue flag to appear on the task for some reason so that you would take a look. They have a question, or they need your help, or they want to send you an FYI, or whatever it is. And the yellow flag usually means somebody besides you was the last person to edit the task. So it could be the other assignee on the task. It could be Liz put something in there for you. Could be anything along those lines. If anyone else besides you was the last person to edit, it would have a yellow flag on it generally. All right, and you can sort by the flags. You can sort by any column heading. If you sort by flags, the order is blue, red, and yellow. So blue floats to the top unless you reverse the sort. So you can also make changes to the way your mine list or any of your lists displays. So if you come in here and you are like, I don't really need to see that flag, column doesn't really mean that much to me for whatever reason, you can kind of hide it, you can move it. Maybe you're like, I want to keep it open, but I want to put it over here at the end because it's not that important to me, or near the end. To move a column, at the top of the column, you put your cursor, and when you see the four-way arrows, you click your mouse and drag it to where you want it, and then let go, and it will move it. You can resize the columns. So if you don't really need to see the request date, that's not important, you can make it narrower. To do that, you put your cursor on the right hand side of the column that you either want to expand or make smaller, and you get that double arrow, and you should be able to get it down as small as you want. So if you have a bunch of columns that aren't real important, you can move them to the end, shut them, close them down so they're not so visible, and then you might want to open up other columns. Maybe if you want to open up and see all the projects that this is tagged to, okay, besides the release that it came from. Or if you want to, if you can't read the whole title and you want to be able to see more of that, you could make that column as wide as you want. You can also sort, as I said, and you can do primary and secondary sorts. The thing to remember is they work the opposite way. The automatic default is by, and I messed it up because, whoops, when I was talking to Liz before everybody came in, we sorted by title. The automatic default is from lowest number to highest number. I like to see the most recent one on top, but that's because we use the system for a little bit different purpose. Most of our update management customers like to sort more by priority, or maybe the status or the task type. If you have tasks of multiple modules on your list, you might want everything grouped together by task type. However you want your page or your list to display is up to you. It's for each individual user. So wherever you log on, Liz, your page is going to look the way you saved it if you choose to make a change. Once you get it the way you want, you save the layout, and every time you log in, your list will display the way you saved it. It also transfers to My Work Groups. which is every task that is in the work group or work groups that you are a part of. You all only have one work group, which means all of you are members of one work group. Work group or people belong to work groups and tasks belong to work groups, which means all of the people in the work group can see all of the tasks if they want to, not that they're all assigned to you, but that you can go and find them and look for other things that might be of interest to you or affect you, even though it's not something you're assigned to. So my work group right now, this is displaying all of the active tasks right now in your work group, which means all of the active tasks for this particular upgrade that you're all working on right now. Work group unassigned would be anything in the work group that is not assigned to a particular user. Okay, so that's how those lists work there. And again, once you save your table layout, that is applied to all of those lists as well as when you run a search. You can temporarily change it. So if, for instance, Liz and I were talking about something before the meeting started, and we decided to sort by title to check on duplicates. And so this, until I change it back to the way I normally have it, or log out and log back in again, it will stay this way for the rest of the session, where it will be sorted by title, even on the search page. So even though you save a particular layout, you can make changes temporarily for the session that you're in, and you can keep changing things depending on what makes sense to you at the time. All right. And then the way we open up a task, doesn't matter what page you're on, when you find a task you want to work on, anywhere in the line where that task is, if you double click, it will open up. All right. When you either save or you go back to your mine list, that task, whoa, why didn't that work? Should have been bookmarked. You can also use the back arrow. That way it was bookmarked. Surprised it didn't stay. I hate when that happens. Anyway, when you're working a list and you're going through, and if you're working from your mine list, for instance, or a search list, every time you close a task, you go back to your list, and the task you were in is bookmarked in blue, so you know the next task that you want to work on, if you're working this list, is the next one there. Okay. Any questions about any of that so far? All right. So now we're going to open up a task, and I'm going to find one maybe that's in an older format. Oh, that's something else I should mention. You may or may not be aware that back in May, Allscripts, who bought Paragon from McKesson, started making some changes to the documentation. So for your particular upgrade and many other customers, Liz had to bring work items into the system from various different document formats. Some of them, like these here, came from a PDF that we scrub basically and give to her, and she can convert it into the system to build the tasks. And this is more in line with what you were used to seeing in the past from McKesson, because some of the documentation actually was created by them before they sold the company. Some of the documentation had to be brought in via spreadsheet or a different type of format. These priority releases they're doing only come in spreadsheet form, but they don't include as much information. So the bottom line is, when you're looking at a task, whether the whole task itself or when you're looking at the list of tasks that you have, the format is going to look a little bit different, or can look different. So this looks more like a typical work item back when it was McKesson. This does not, because it has to do with these new formats that Allscripts has come up with or is using to deliver your documentation. So just want to make sure you're aware that not everything is going to look the same. All right, so when we open up a task, you all of a sudden then have these tabs on the left-hand side, and these are section tabs, and these each represent a different I think of it as like a page in the task, except that this portion of the task here, this, we call it the static portion, will always be visible no matter which tab you have open or which page you have open. So at any time, as long as the task is open, you can see the title, the task number that was given to the task when it was converted into the system, and all of these other standard fields, including the requester, who is Liz, who put them into the system, your work group, which task type or module or application or whatever you want to call it. They're kind of interchangeable here. The priority, the status, who the assignees are, the projects, and so forth. Those can be seen no matter where you are in the task. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about these standard fields. Most of them you won't do anything with, but they are things you can search on, and we'll talk about that later if you wanted to search for everything in a particular task type that was assigned to a particular person or an other assignee or a primary or a particular project. You can search by all those fields. You're probably, well, work group, you only have one again, so there's no way anybody can change it. Task type is how things are brought into the system for the most part and automatically assigned to users. So unless, you know, this is terribly wrong for some reason, you wouldn't change the task type. So the fields up from here on up, you probably don't worry about changing anything, but you might use that information for searches or whatnot. The priority, this is something that can be changed for various reasons. Priority means how important is this work item or this task. And when Liz converted everything in, she brings it in under what we call a default. Some people call it routine, some you guys call it standard. It's kind of like we don't know how important this is until somebody starts testing or looking for particular things in tasks. So it just comes in kind of, it's a standard task and we're going to start working in unless we find a reason to change the status. Test first is if you were to sort your list by priority, would float to the top. It has the highest priority. So it indicates that's something that should be tested first before other things. Then it would be high, standards in the middle, and low is something probably means it's not that important to test, or we'll test it if we have time. All right. Liz, did you want to talk about the statuses or the priorities, excuse me, at all? Is there any reason, or would there be a reason for a user to change a priority?
Possibly, especially if it's a bug that we know we got fixed, or if there is an enhancement that's going to be really important for people to work on, to test and learn and make sure that everybody is aware of it. Yeah, otherwise, probably not.
Okay. And we're going to talk about searching later, but yeah, you can go and look for particular things. And, you know, we've had customers in the past where their users would go and look for things. It could be within their modules, or it could be across modules, looking for things that had to do with meaningful use, for instance. If that was the most important thing at the time that we made sure we complied with and had everything set, we might look for every task that had to do with meaningful use and put it in a test first priority, so that users know that whatever's on your list, you better start with those, because those are the, you know, these are a higher priority for us. It could be, and we're going to talk about this, searching for something where you open your hospital open to service order. So you might say those are in a high priority because we know we've had issues with this before. So it's just important to be aware if something is on your list that has a higher priority or a lower priority, that you might use that as a way to figure out what to work on next. But for the most part, things are probably going to stay in the default. Okay. The status of a task has to do with not how important it is, although sometimes they align, but where in the life of the task. So most of your tasks are coming in assigned to somebody. And if you open up this drop down, these are not, they don't go in order. So everything doesn't go from top to bottom. Sometimes it moves around. They come in assigned, you start working on it, but you're not done. So you put it in open in progress. Then you finish testing it and happy ending, everything worked the way it was supposed to, you complete it. Completed status is an inactive status. Once something is completed, it falls off of everybody's list who was assigned to it. So in this case, if I'm signed in here as Liz, if I complete this task and save it, it's going to fall off of Fernando's list as well as Liz's because it's been completed. All right. We know that that doesn't always happen. It's not always, happy ending. Sometimes there's a bug and you have to open a service order. So this status indicates it's not done, it's not completed, it's active, and this is where we're at. We've opened a service order with Allscripts about this particular work item because something's not working the way it should. If you find that something indicates in the testing notes that there's no testing required, or it says, that you can't test it, then putting it in no testing required would also complete it. It's another flavor of completed, we call it, which means we're done with it. It's not active, but we didn't actually test it because there was no way to test it. Not applicable, again, another flavor of completed. We're done with this because it doesn't apply to us, falls off of your list. So you have a couple different ways to complete tasks, but there's if something's in a status of not applicable, nobody's gonna think somebody actually tested it. This means it didn't apply to us. So it wasn't tested, it's just completed, and it will fall off of everybody's list. Future is kind of a limbo status. It's not active. It will fall off of people's lists, but it's also not completed, and it can be found later when maybe it's time to actually test it when you are taking that enhancement. Deleted is not something you would use unless you happen to get something you shouldn't have gotten. This is basically used for mistakes. Did not test is usually used. Somebody like Liz, excuse me, when she's done, when you guys are done with this update and she's getting ready to load new work items for the next update, there might be things left behind that didn't get tested. So that's what that would be used for. It would say, this needs to go away, needs to get hidden. So it's not on anybody's list, but we did not test it because we didn't have time or whatever it is. Liz, did you want to talk a little bit about some of the statuses, in particular, the bug statuses?
Okay. All right. If you have any issues, we put it into open and in progress unless it needs a service order. I know that some people can put in service orders. If not, let me know. Let me know which task it is, any screenshots if you have them, and then I'll put in a service order and I'll update the ticket.
I prefer it that way.
Okay. But I didn't like the status of failed, so I removed it because I didn't want it to just get marked as failed and forgotten about. So just didn't want stuff to get neglected.
Okay. So what Liz is basically saying is, you could open a service order, that's an active status, and then at some point, maybe, when it does end up getting fixed, that task could be completed, and then it would fall off of your list that way. All right. And just so you know, Liz mentioned notifying her if you need her to open a service order, and we'll talk about the different ways you can do that. One of the best ways is by sending an email. So we will talk about how to email a task to somebody, including Liz, for that purpose. For those of you that choose to put something in this status yourself, Liz has built an email rule, an automatic email rule that when someone puts a task in the status, it will send her an email so that she knows. So anytime that happens, that something goes into that status, she is going to receive an email notification. But you can also send ad hoc email notifications if you need her help to have her open the service order, even before she puts it into that status. Okay. The primary assignee is this person here where it says assignee. And the other assignee in this case, and there could be multiples, is Liz. On this particular page, the other assignees are display only, but we'll talk about where you can change, where you can edit the other assignees when you're in the task. If it was appropriate for, Fernando's working this task, maybe he's got somebody on his team that's an expert in whatever this task has to do with, he could reassign it if appropriate by just choosing a different assignee, and that person, once it was saved, it would then fall off of his list and be on my list. I'm not going to save anything, but just showing you how that works. You cannot have a other assignee without having a primary, and you can't have the same person as both. It will not let you do that. Okay. The primary project, in this case, when Liz converts the work items into the system, she assigns each set of release notes a project. So she knows that all of the work items in this primary project came from the 15.0 CU2 release notes. In addition to that, she has created what we call an umbrella project, because you have multiple. If you look in the project, the drop down, there was multiple projects that really, this represents multiple sets of release notes that had to be loaded into the system to make sure you have all the work items you need to test for this particular upgrade that you're taking. So this ties everything together under one other project, all right, which makes it very nice for running reports, so you can see exactly how many work items you have in all modules across all of these release notes. All right, and you can create other projects. It doesn't always have to do with release notes or what your update is. It could be, we've had customers who say, I'm responsible for the interfaces module, but I know there are other work items out there and other modules that have to do with interfaces, and I want to know what those are and see how it may or may not affect what I have to do. So if you created a project called interfaces, you could go and search for all work items that have to do with interfaces, not just by the task type, and kind of wrap a rubber band around those and say all of these, even though they're across different modules, have to do with interfaces. We've had customers use it in the past to tag everything that had to do with meaningful use. If you're responsible for reports, maybe everything that has to do with reports. I'm sure you can think of different examples where it might be nice to kind of group things. It's kind of a subgroup of the entire project that has to do with a particular topic. Okay, and you can put as many other projects on as you like as well, and these are all searchable. So if I wanted to search on everything that somebody else even put into the interfaces project or the meaningful use project, I can go and just search by those projects. Okay. Might as well, I guess I'll finish this part up first. I didn't mention that when you open up the task, you default to what's called the request tab, or the request portion of the task, and this is where the release notes or the documentation from the vendor are. The way your system has been set up, these are protected so that no one can accidentally delete something. You can add things. If you were to type notes down here and save them, they would then become protected and would be appended or added on to what was here, but these are protected. It's very common for customers not to want the release notes to be editable so that nobody accidentally deletes something. all right? But you can always add notes. You can even upload attachments here too. And if you hover over here, you can see all the different types of files that can be attached to a task. Most of the time, you don't do that on the request description, because if you go to the progress section of the task, this is where most of your documentation happens. When you're working the task, you're going through the testing steps. This is where you're going to document what happens. Again, this portion is still visible and editable. You can see that, but now you have some other things that you can do. The progress notes are where you actually would put any documentation. If you had to include like information about, you know, patient information that you used for the test, or if something didn't work the way you thought it should, then you can also attach screenshots if you want to. And this is where most of that information about what happened when I tested or what I found out about when I tested goes. The information here is your custom region that was built for your facility specifically, and all of these queries or questions can be searched on. So if you, and this, you know, this is important to know, does this work item involve go live prep, parameter change, dictionary change, training required, all those types of things. So if it does, you indicate that, and then anybody, including Liz or the people that are responsible for dictionary changes, could find every task out there where the user indicated there was a dictionary change needed. Or if you're a person who does training, you can find, you know, or even if you want to look by your particular, you know, things that affect your department where you work, you can go and look and find everything where somebody indicated training required. If a service order gets opened, that service order number could be recorded here, and that is also searchable. So that way you can tie the work item itself with the service order that you had to open up around there. And then if there is a work item going to come out of whatever happened here, another work item, that could be recorded here as well. Yesterday in the training, we talked about if somebody indicated training required or dictionary change, where would they document or make a note about who needed to be trained or what that dictionary change was. So Liz, what did we decide yesterday, that where are people gonna, like, if they need to make any notes about any of these particular things where they said yes, where do they need to document what that would involve?
Just in the progress notes field, since you're already on that tab.
Okay. All right. So in other words, if you check training required, you could put down here who needs to be trained, why, what kind of training, you know, whatever would be appropriate included in here. Okay. The solution tab, this particular editor doesn't get used very often for update management. It's more for customers that use StreamTask for request management, where they're looking, people are making requests from all over the hospital for things like maintenance or reports or access or whatever it is, and the outcome of whatever that request is would get recorded here. But for your purposes, you should know that on the solution tab, you can always tell who the last person was that edited the task and when that was. So if a task on your list has a yellow flag on it, somebody else besides you made an edit, and you know, maybe a status was changed, or you know, another project was added, you can say, oh, Liz was the last person who edited that task, so she must have made that change. But any documentation that you put in here, and I don't have an example of, we'll look at an example later, but when you put documentation in the editors and you save, it puts a date and time stamp on it. So because I'm logged in as Liz, if I save something in here, it would put her name and the date and time that was saved. All right, so when you're in a task and you're looking at the documentation, you know exactly who put that note in or that question or whatever it is, you'll know that, because that will be indicated in the date and time stamp. All right, the projects tab, this is where it allows you to add or remove these other projects. All right, so if you decide to create another project around interfaces or something else, if it was over here, you could just click on it, you'd pull it over, and now this would be added along with the umbrella project as an other project on this particular task. And again, I'm not saving any of this, but if you go to the next tab, this is how it would display. But nothing is saved until or unless I click the save button. In your system right now, I believe it's set up that when you do save your changes, it automatically brings you to the time log page. It will not record the time automatically, and it is not required in order to save the task. So if you didn't want to record any time, you could just click save and you'd go back to your list. If you did want to record time, you just put in however much time you spent. You could change the date. Oh, I worked in here 20 minutes yesterday, so I'm going to change the date to yesterday. You know, I'm signed in as Liz, but Liz might say, oh, yesterday Colleen helped me for 20 minutes, so I'm going to record her time in here, so that we're, you know, if you're tracking time or you want to see how much, you know, a user wants to see how much time they spent testing for this upgrade, or you wanted plan for resources for the next upgrade, you know, recording your time, you know, that's the way you do it. And then it keeps track of every time log and then the total down at the bottom. Again, it's not required. If you didn't want to put anything in here, you just save and it would go back to your list. All right. The notify tab, this is where you can add and remove the other assignees. So if you know, Liz was working this task and decided that Chantel needed to be added as an other assignee for some reason, you need her help or you have a question, you know, you can just put that person on, or if it was a matter of taking herself off and making that person the other assignee, that's where you do that. Double arrows will remove or add everybody, so try to avoid that. Just bring people over singly back and forth. That's the best way to do it. So the blue flag that I talked about before, that notification where somebody wants you to take notice and look at this task, this is where this happens as well. So the default is none. So there's no blue flag on this task because it's at none. But if I made a change and I want to notify, I say I want to notify Chantel, now that I've added her on this task, I want to make sure she takes note and looks at it. I could say I want to notify the other assignees. All right, so that would mean only she would get a blue flag on the task. Or I might want to notify the primary or all assignees, but the default is none. Okay, that's the only way to force a blue flag. The reminder, you can set a reminder on tasks as well, and that happens here also. So an example might be if you have a need where you're testing and then you need to wait a couple days before you do the next step in the testing. If you wanted to, you could set a reminder for yourself and say on Friday, okay, I want to set a reminder. Just doing this is enough to trigger a yellow flag. You absolutely have, if you want to set a reminder, at the least you have to put a date on it. And that will trigger a yellow flag. Again, unlike somebody else was the last to edit, it gets used for the reminder flag as well. But what a lot of our customers do is they put something in a particular status or a particular priority or both at the same time. So some customers have even created a status of reminder. So they know why they have the yellow flag because it triggered a reminder. So if I were to use this, I could say on Friday, I want to put this in a status of open. It has to be an active status or it's not going to make any sense, with a priority of high, or maybe I just put it in a, don't even choose a status. I just say I want to put this in a priority of high so that when it triggers that yellow flag on Friday, the priority will also be high, and that will remind me that I need to do something with this task. All right, so that's just how reminders work. All right, and it would trigger the flag for the reminder flag for everyone who's assigned to the task. Okay, so those are the sections of the task. Over here, if you were, wanted to save your work, obviously you click save. You can also do Control S. Any of our buttons that have an underscore, like for clear, you can do Control C. Some people like keystrokes. Some people like to use the mouse. In the beginning, I talked about timeout. Another way you can reset your time if you're afraid you might get timed out. Maybe you're on the progress section, you're testing and you're busy typing notes in here, but you're not ready to save. You're not done, and the phone rings, or somebody comes into your office, asks you a question. If you're afraid you're going to time out, you can click refresh. It simply resets the time back to 30 minutes. So it's like starting the timer all over again. It doesn't save anything. You're still going to need to save if you want those things to be updated. But it gives you, it's a way of making sure you don't time out before you're done doing what you need to do. Again, if you have a task open and you're 5 minutes from your timeout, you should get a reminder pop up on the screen. And if you click OK, you'll reset the timer as well. But for that to work, you kind of have to be looking at your screen. So sometimes, if you leave a task open and you go to lunch, you're probably not going to see the reminder that you're going to time out. Okay, and even if you come back later and click OK, it's going to just log you out. So just a warning about that. So if you have anything important in a task and you need to walk away, you probably want to save it. Okay, but if you're still working, it's something that's taking you a long time, or maybe you're jotting notes on a piece of paper, and then when you're all done, you're going to actually put your documentation in here, but you have it open so you can see the testing steps. So you don't want to keep saving and going back to your list and opening it again. So you just click refresh and restart the clock until you're ready to save. Okay. Email. We mentioned this. If you think you might need a service order opened, or you don't have the ability to open a service order and you want to ask Liz to help you, you might just leave it in open in progress. You could put a note or in the email that you send her what the issue is. You probably want to have your documentation and any screenshots or attachments or anything to go along with it in the task. But if you want to let her know you need help or you think she should open a service order, if you click on email, you go in here and you pick her email address and pull it over, and you can pick multiple people if that's appropriate. This is who the emails will go to, and then you put a note in here. Liz, I think you might want to open a service order about this. It's not necessary, but sometimes it's helpful, especially if there's multiple assignees on a task, although you can find out who sent the email in the audit trail. But if you put your name in here, then she'll know who it came from. We do have a future enhancement that's going to tell you who sent you the email, but right now it doesn't do that. But you can go and find out. Email, if you click email, it will simply take you back to the task, and then you can continue working it, or if you're done, you can save it. If you've done all your edits and you're just emailing and you're just done with it, you can do email and save. It will save your changes and send the task to whoever you chose. And it actually sends the task itself, okay, to that person. All right, along with your whatever comments you put up at the top. So again, you can put a question or indicate why you're emailing it right here. All right, so I'm going to go back arrow, pretend I just cleared or whatever. So here we are back at the task. Any questions about any of this before we get to the fun searching part? Everybody fell asleep, right?
No, we're still awake. We're good.
All right. One other thing, the quick find button. And I use this a lot. This allows you to go to, if you know a task number that you want to go to, you don't have to go run a search. You don't have to go through your list or whatever. You can just put that number in the field, and this is remembering it from yesterday. And you either click enter or click on the magnifying glass, and it's going to take you right to that task that you put in there. Okay. This is a sample task that I created for the training. You can see here what a date timestamp looks like when people have entered notes, and it does it in the editor where you can edit things as well. So not just the protected field where you add things, but anything that you've typed into any of the editors, it's going to have who the user was and the date and time that they put that information in there. Okay, so that's an example of that. All right. Now, on to searching, which is the best part of StreamTask. All right. You can, as a user, go into StreamTask, you log in, you're on your list of tasks here. This is everything assigned to me. Liz has 1,787 tasks on her list. That's a lot of tasks. And they're not necessarily in any particular order. Yes, you could sort by type or status or whatever, but that's a lot of tasks. If that's your to-do list, it's kind of overwhelming. So what we try to help people with is find a way to get to what's important to you or what you can work on for today. So that's where the search comes in handy. Again, you're all part of the work group, so you can see all of the tasks that are in here. One thing to remember is this, and I think I said this yesterday, a lot of times we get calls or emails from customers saying, I'm searching for these tasks, I know they're there, and I can't find them. They're not coming up. I know I'm choosing the right type and whatever, and I'll say, could they have been completed? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, well, that's why. The search defaults to looking for active tasks, okay? So your things that are assigned, bugs, open, in progress, if they've been put into a completed type of status, like completed, not applicable, no testing required, future, they're not going to show up unless you check this box. This is how you look for tasks that are in inactive status. Just because they're completed doesn't mean they're not in the database. They're still in the database and you can go find them. You just have to make sure you check that box, right? Even if you chose the status of completed, if you don't check the box, it's not going to find them, all right? So you might want to look for a specific completed status, not everything that's in an inactive status. So even so, you got to check that box, right? You do not have to choose the work group. You only have one, so it defaults to looking at all work groups, which in your case means it's looking at your one work group. So there's no reason at this point, if you were to use the system for something else and had a different work group, then you might want to hone in on the work group that you're interested in, but you don't have to choose that. You can search on any of the standard fields, the modules. You can pick multiples. If you're responsible for ambulatory care, EHR, and practice management, use your control on your keyboard and your mouse click to click all the modules, however many you want to run a search on. So in any of these fields, you can choose multiples by using your control click, all right? Same for priority. If you wanted to look for everything that was in test first and high in your particular modules, assigned to a particular person in a particular set of release notes, you could do that. I'm going to clear this. All right.
I have a question about the task type. Sorry to interrupt. I have a question about the task type.
Yep.
Users, if they're like, a question came up yesterday from the HIM director about wanting to look at interface tasks in case any apply to her applications. users aren't limited to their task to search on other tasks. Is that right? So she could, if she wanted to, look up the interface task?
Yep. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I'm not, you're not, I don't think you're assigned to everything in the system, but again, if you're in the work group and the tasks of all these types are in the work group, you can go and find them, even though they're not assigned to you. So yes, so that's a good example. So again, if like interfaces, that's a popular thing. I want to know everything out there, even outside of my module, or if she wants to find out what's in a particular module that might affect her, yes, they can go and find those tasks.
Okay.
Good question.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. There are, I say that, but there are different permissions that can be tweaked for certain roles. But in your case, that's not how it is. Your assignees have the ability to find everything that's in the work group, and it's actually helpful. I think it would be a hindrance to limit people to only be able to see what they're assigned to. Okay. You can also search on custom fields. You can only search on one custom field at a time. So if you wanted to find a particular task where someone had indicated training required, and then you have to indicate the answer you're looking for, and it's very literal. In your system, all your radio buttons are Y and N, not yes and no. They could have been built that way, but they weren't. So if I want to find everything where somebody indicated Y for yes, I just type a Y. All right, and then when I run my search, it's going to find that sample task that I created where I checked yes for training required. Okay. So if I wanted to find, if I wanted then to go and search and find everything, or I wanted to find a service order, I know the number, I can just put in the number of the service order, even though I can't remember which task it was connected to exactly. If I put in, I say I want to search on that field and that's the number I'm looking for, again, it's going to find that task where I put I put that number in there. If you wanted to find all tasks where anybody had put something in that field, no matter what the number was, or even if it wasn't a number, you could use what we call the wild card, and that's an asterisk. And again, that's going to find any task out there. And again, I could limit it to a particular module, a particular set of release notes, a particular assignee, or anything else. The more criteria I pick, the narrower the search results are going to end up being. But I'm searching the whole entire database, all the active tasks out there right now for this update project. And right now there are actually 2 tasks that have a service order number that was put in here. So that's how I would find any task that had an entry. Use the wildcard. All right. And I forgot to mention at the beginning, I know I sent Liz an agenda for this training as well as a couple other documents. One of them has hints about searching that might be helpful for folks. The other one is what we call our quick reference guide, which has little hints about things like if you're looking for an active task, check the include an active, how to do the wildcard search, that kind of stuff. Just little something that's nice to have at your workstation, just to have handy.
I emailed those out yesterday. If you don't find them, please let me know and I'll send them again. Okay.
So, so that's how you search on your custom fields. Another thing, and this is great because you might be looking, again, this comes into play like if people were looking for anything that had to do, remember I talked about interfaces, if you wanted to look across all modules and find anything where that occurred, not just the task type for interfaces, but anything where they referred to it, you would put it in the search string. And you can search on a word, multiple words, a phrase, multiple phrases. You can tell it to be case sensitive if that was appropriate. If you were looking for, you know, MU2 or whatever, and it's always capitalized M and U, you could say, oh, case sensitive. I only want it to look exactly the way I have it here. Whole words only comes into play if you're looking for something that might be part of another word, but you're like, I only want it if it's just this exact word. You can tell it automatically defaults to search everything, the title, the request description, the progress notes, the solution editor, but maybe you want to narrow your search to only the title, or maybe you only want to narrow it to the request description. So you could uncheck those other things. I don't think well, there might be something in the progress notes, but you could do that. And then when you run your search, and on the search page, I should have mentioned, you can click search, Control S, or if you hit enter on the search page, after you've picked your criteria, it will run your search. So I came up with 41 tasks where interfaces is in the request description somewhere. And you'll notice they're not all in the module for interfaces. So this is an example of possibly where someone might say, I'm going to put a rubber band around all these by tagging them with a project called interfaces, because I know there's things out there in other modules, not just in the interfaces module, that has to do with interfaces, and I want to keep an eye on them or be aware of them or review them or whatever it is. Okay. We always try to do, this is our classic example, is searching on vital signs. This would be considered, two words. The default, however, is or. So if I just search on vital signs, okay, and it's set to or, what it's really doing is looking for any task where either the word vital or the word signs, and I really don't want to limit it, but it's going to come out the same results anyway. So if I change to and, it's telling it, okay, I want you to look for the tasks where both of those words are in there. If I run that search, I come up with 38. But in reality, what I really want is I want to search for the phrase vital signs. This will make sure I don't get any false positives, because and maybe the word vital is in the title and the word signs is somewhere in the request description. I'm really looking for that phrase. So if I put it in quotes, and then it doesn't matter if I have and or checked, and hit enter, it still only come up with 38, but at least I know that I'm getting any task where that phrase is. And we can all use the Control F here. If you use that, okay, it should be. Why is it? If you type the word that you were searching on, the phrase you were searching on, using Control F, it will highlight that in the task. So especially if there's a lot of testing notes, if it's, you know, a lot of documentation, it will stand out and you can actually find it and say, oh yeah, it did refer to vital signs in here. So that's just a little helpful hint if you're trying to make sure you're looking for something, making sure that what you were looking for is actually in the task. So and this might be an example for testing purposes. Maybe that's something that you're interested in. So you say, I'm going to look for everything where it says vital signs and is in a particular module and assigned to me, and then you're going to get a list that's not so huge for you to actually work on for the amount of time that you have. Okay, so it's just one way to kind of narrow in on something that might be important to you, but we just want to demonstrate how the phrases work in the string search. Everybody's favorite string search, of course, has to do with finding things where it doesn't need to be tested. So we start with no steps to test, which is something that's typically in the Paragon documentation, that phrase. And if we run a search on the whole project, we find 77 tasks where it said no steps to test. But we also know that they say it different ways. So you can actually search on multiple phrases. Again, put the phrase in quotes and leave a space in between each. If you're searching on multiple words, just leave spaces in between. And then when I run my search, I end up with, whoops, what did I do that I shouldn't have done?
Sorry, I had to move the mouse because the monitor was going black. So sorry about that.
Oh boy, that's not good. All right, so
Calling it.
here again, I'm putting in the 3 different phrases, making sure that they're all in quotes and there's spaces in between. So it's going to search for any task that has any one of these, and now I come up with 79. So the one thing about this is we would never tell you, oh, you found 79 tasks where it says no steps to test or no testing required. You can just go and batch, put those all into your no testing required, whatever your status is for that, and get rid of them. We would never say you should do that. We would say, okay, you found these. Now maybe you need to check and make sure that for sure it doesn't say no testing required unless, or if you use this particular functionality, you don't need to test, or whatever it is. So one of the ways you can do that, and this might be a big number, it might be easier if you were looking only in one particular module, or only the modules that you're responsible for, rather than everything that's in the entire database. What you could, a fast way to kind of review those things is to take all of those tasks and go to the batch page. This is where we can batch edit our tasks, and these are all of the fields that we can batch edit. What that means is if we choose a change here, we can apply that to all or any of these tasks here that we pick. So all 79 tasks are on this page. You can't open them up on the search page or on the batch page, but we can apply universal changes. So one of the things you could do before you put them into that status is to select them all, or you can pick and choose, whichever ones you want. Or you could, I didn't mean to pick that one. You can control and unclick it. All right, it's not, oh, there we go. But we're going to select all, choose every single one. And if you click on this view button, and I forgot to show you that in the task, shame on me, it flips these to what we call view mode. All right, which is, you can see the entire task, okay, all portions of it. It's nice and neat. If you need at any point to print a task out, we don't advocate printing them out, but if you need to, flip it to view mode and print that way. Otherwise, you're going to kill trees. This will use a lot less paper than if you try to print it from edit mode. But what happens on the batch page, we have all 79 tasks in view mode, and it puts these little arrows, and it allows me to kind of scroll through one task at a time. I can look it over and say, yep, I don't need to do anything there. No, I don't need to do anything. Maybe one of them I say, you know what, I'm not gonna complete 14171. So I make a note. Okay, 14171. That I can't complete that one because, or put it into no testing required because I need to do something else with it or whatever. Then you can go back to batch and you can say, okay, I checked them all, fine, select all, and we're going to put them in a status of no testing required. And then if you did that and you click save, every single one of these would be put into that status of no testing required. Okay, or you could say, I only want to do that with certain ones. I made notes about the ones I don't really want to complete right now or put in that status. You can choose the status, and then if you save, it's only going to apply it to the ones that you chose, not all of them. Okay. Let's go back to search here. Couple other examples. Maybe you want to look for something that doesn't apply to you. Anything that has to do with a third party, whatever. Oops. Oh, I cannot type today. NX. All right. Because I didn't do it. Misspelled it again. Right. Anything, sometimes that's a module, but sometimes it appears in other tasks. So you might not convert the task for that module in if you don't use it, but there might be other things out there that have to do with it. So you go and find them and you say, you know what, this, we don't need to test this because we're not using that functionality, or we don't use that application or whatever it is. And you might say, okay, I'm going to go take these to the batch page and put them into a status of not applicable. All right. So that's another way you can utilize the system either to find things that are important that you want to work on, or up the priority, or find things that are not important that can't be tested or whatever that you can get rid of. All right. So there's a couple different ways to tackle it. One of the things that customers like is to be able to search on their hospital name to see all the tasks where you have opened up service orders with the vendor. And if you look in here, it'll say Gritman Medical Center, okay, and under related service orders or cases, right? So, you know, you might decide, I'm going to find all of those things, and then I'm going to go to the batch page, which you can also do Control B, as well as click on batch. Take it to the batch edit page, and I am going to up the priority of these to high, because we know we had issues with these things. We had to open service orders, so I want these to be a higher priority for testing than some other things. And then if you selected them all and saved, they would all be in a priority of high. Okay. One of the things to remember about the search page is your results will stay there. They will not change. Even if you batch updated the assignee or the status or the priority, if you come back to search, just come back here, it's going to look exactly the same. And that's by design. If you were working from this list, you wouldn't want things to be constantly moving and changing. So it's going to stay here until you either clear it, or you change the criteria, or maybe you did put some of these in a final purgeable status. If you just click search again, those are going to go away because they are no longer active and your search criteria was active. Okay. But this will stay here even if you leave, if you go and run reports, if you go look at your list, you know, you come back to search, they're still going to be here unless you clear, change the criteria and run the search again, or if you log out, when you log back in, your search results are not still going to be there. Okay. Anybody have any examples, particular things that are important for them that they might run a, you know, use this string search field to look for things outside of like a particular module name? Nope. All right. Let me see what else. Oh, one example again of how to maybe narrow your search. I did a few examples the other day. Like if I pretend that I'm Chantel, all right, and I'm going to come in here and look for everything assigned to me, all right, again, for the entire project, 65 tasks. Well, that's a lot of tasks. I do not have time to work on those. I only have a little bit of time today. I need to narrow my search. So maybe you say, I'm going to look at a particular module. I'm going to say, I can work on anything in the, let me see if what I have in the portal module, because I know I'm responsible for that. Whoops, that was not what I wanted. And I run my search. I only have 2 tasks, and you know, Chantel says, oh, I have time to do this. I'm just going to work on these 2 right now, and then I have to go to a meeting, kind of a thing. So it's a way to kind of narrow down your search. You can look for, you could also do the same thing for things assigned to you in a particular priority or a particular status. Or you could, you know, you can mix and match. So another example would be if you're Chris Schultz and everything on your list totals 493, that's a lot. But if you know you are responsible for med admin, you're going to go and find, oops, don't go too fast. Find all those tasks that are assigned to you for that module. 77, that's still quite a few. So you say to yourself, I'm going to look and see if there's anything in these tasks that have to do with security, because that's an important piece of this. 6 tasks. Okay. I have time today. These are important. These are things I know we really need to test. So right now I'm only going to work on these 6 tasks. Instead of just going to your list and starting at the beginning, or just doing everything in a particular task type all at once. There's no right or wrong way, but it just helps you kind of hone in on things a little bit. I failed when we were first looking at the task. And this is probably a good example because this is a pretty long task. There's a lot in here. So one way you can see the whole thing, and I like using view. How did this same thing happened yesterday where we had no primary? I'm not sure how that happened. It's not really allowed. Anyway, if you flip the task to view, okay, you can see the entire task all on one page. Again, if for whatever reason it would be helpful for you to print this particular task out, you want to do it from view mode. And you can just, it's maybe a little bit easier because you can see everything all at once. You can read through it, that kind of thing. And then if you decide you need to make some edits, you just click on edit. You're back on the task, and then you say, okay, I'm going to go over the progress section. I read through that, and we are definitely going to need to do some training, or, whatever. You can put in your documentation. If everything you tested and everything looks good, you can just complete it. Happy ending. It falls off your list. But again, it's just, you can always flip from view to edit as you see appropriate. And the only other thing we touched on a little bit yesterday at the end was creating tasks manually. And there may or may not be a reason to do this, but if you all decided at some point you needed to open up a task to track some kind of a defect that you found, maybe that had nothing to do with the particular work item, it's just something you came across. You might even decide to create a project or some kind of a type or something of defect. If you wanted to create a task manually, as opposed to the way Liz actually converts either a text document or a spreadsheet into the system, you simply, if you go to the task tab, you can click create and you get a blank task. If you are going to open up a task, we tell you, try to fill it in left to right, top to bottom. You won't get a task number until you save it. You won't be able to choose a task type or priority or status or assignee or project until you choose a work group, even though you only have one, because the work group will filter those other things. So I'm not going to actually create a task, but if I were to create a task, I'd give it some kind of title, choose myself as the requester. Whoops. Your title could be whatever your issue was or problem or whatever. And now that I've chosen the work group, I can choose a task type that might be appropriate, a priority. I can assign it, put my notes in here, and then when I hit save, it will generate a task number for that. All right. Anything you can think of, Liz, that I may have missed, or anything else that you would like to address with the group in terms of policies and procedures, or?
I can't think of anything, but if you have any questions, let me know. Some of the tasks may note some changes that need to be made in reference masters or with user permissions. Chantel takes care of the user permissions. I can fill in as a backup if need be. as far as the reference master stuff goes. I know some of you can do that. If not, let me know and I'll take care of it.
All right. Well, if there's no other questions, I will let you all go. I know you're all busy and have lots of things to do. And now that you've done this, you can jump right in there and start testing, right?
All right. Thank you so much, Sherry. I really appreciate your help.
Thank you.
You're welcome, guys. Good luck. All
Thank you. Have a good one.
right. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.